Very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's uLaw webinar. The topic for today's webinar is Everything Practice Management. This particular webinar has been accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. Everything Practice Management is the title that you would use when you log into your individual Law Society portals so that you can claim this 1 hour of CPD credits once you've completed participating in this webinar. Okay? So welcome everyone, and please do use the chat window to ask any questions that you may have for myself and the team here at uLaw. We are a Canadian legal accounting, practice management, and business accounting software company that's presenting this webinar to you. Based out of Ottawa, we've been serving legal practitioners across the country here in Canada, exclusively in Canada, for the past 14 years. And we welcome you to learn more about us and what we can offer at our website, uLaw.io. And let me jump into our webinar series concludes next week, this week being the Everything Practice Management, and we have another CPD session next week. So if you need to catch up on your CPD hours, this is a great opportunity. Besides this, you can also visit our YouTube channel, uLawPractice, and look at webinars. And we have recorded sessions of previous webinars that I've conducted or the team has delivered, and you are able to review those CPD sessions as well to make up for any CPD credits that you need by end of the year. Okay? So let's bring our focus back to today's webinar. We're going to talk about Everything Practice Management. And when we first started delivering this webinar, one of the fundamental ideas that we had in terms of the subject matter is to really talk at a high level, but also provide enough context to the different requirements that we believe that you as a legal practitioner have, or obligations that you have with regards to your professional, like who we are as a professional in this legal business, right? There are, of course, audits that are conducted for some aspects of these obligations. The Law Society of the different governing bodies across provinces do define as part of the professional obligations needed by you as a legal practitioner in that province. And you can visit the individual Law Society portals to learn more. But what we try to do is encompass all of that in a 7-point series, starting with the client intake till the personal management. We've covered as much as we can in terms of the expected bylaws, as well as the guidelines, recommendations, and kind of summarized it under these professional obligations. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a good starting point, but we certainly encourage you to visit your individual Law Society portals if you need more elaboration on these subject matters. Okay, so we start off with one of the fundamental aspects, one of the obligations that you have is regarding how you manage your client intake process. It's not just the process itself, it's how do you manage that process? How do you make the communication of your service offerings clear, crisp, meaningful, and easily understandable to your end client? Obligations with regards to how best you manage your matters or files, ensuring that there's no confusion across matters, across files, ensuring that you have all of the both electronic or paper records of all the audit trail that you're needed to provide during an audit, spot audit, or otherwise with regards to a specific file or matter. Okay. Then comes the financial management of the numbers that are involved in managing these clients. You're running your legal business in terms of the revenue that you generate, the trust account that you may have, the general accounts, so on and so forth. It really comes down to ledgers and journals, and there's certainly a professional obligation around how you manage them, and most importantly, how you report them back as being managed back and readily available to the auditors when asked for. Okay, so a simple example of that would be the requirement for at least a monthly reconciliation statement, ensuring the ledgers, journals are being recorded and reported on a monthly basis, and so that you're best prepared for these audits when they happen. Then we'd certainly talk about the Law Society highlights the importance of you as a business owner and the importance of having the appropriate knowledge, learning, training around how best you can manage your business in general. Okay? One is focusing on how best you can work as a legal practitioner, litigating or otherwise, ensuring the success of your client, going to court, really being the daredevil that you are. That's a statement we often use. But there's another component to being a legal practitioner, especially if you're a sole practitioner and if you run a business. If you're employed, of course, that's a different conversation. But if you're running your own business, which a good majority of who we find today, or at least start off being as business owners, an important component is managing all aspects of your business, ensuring that you're doing the right marketing to get the word out, the right strategies to ensure that you're getting clients knowing you and responding to you, having the right acumen or the people involved who can manage your office expenses, ensuring there's a strategy around how best you can reduce expenses as you go along, finding ways that you can cut corners, of course, in this very competitive market, but also finding new, innovative, technology-driven sometimes, but new innovative processes and methods through which you can differentiate yourself from, let's say, another legal business or legal practitioner. Maybe it's the focus that you have as a business. Maybe it's the price, the way you're pricing your services. There could be many reasons, right? So business management really talks about how, the importance of you having a strategy and a plan to sustain and have a profitable business for a sustained period of time. Okay. Professional management, so such as your participation today, talking about the importance of how you contribute back to the profession in general, some of the obligations such as CPDs in terms of training, learning, that are mandated in a way for you to participate and report. And the last two components is something that the Law Societies, interestingly enough, talk quite a bit. We first started off with the LSUC or LSO, Ontario, and we've moved, of course, through all other provinces and reviewed it. And they certainly talk about time management and personal management and the need for a management component for both of these two items. Time management, of course, don't want to preach to the choir. You probably are business professionals already. You kind of understand the importance of time management. But one of the things we wanted to deliver was, as a legal practitioner, time is short and there are multiple files that have to be managed, and one of the components of your time management is also time equals revenue. So we wanted to talk about how best can you manage time that converts into revenue, and also report upon important things such as pro bono hours that could often be time spent on a docket or a matter that's not billable, and or other tasks that you are doing that are not related to a client or a matter, which also invariably becomes a non-billable matter, but it's your time spent on it. So we wanted to draw your attention through this webinar to find ways, processes, methods through which you can capture these moments, record them, review them at the end of the year, such as this is a great time for you to review how best you've managed your time, whether that's through timesheets, understanding your top clients, where you've spent the time, so on and so forth. And last, of course, we talk about personal management is really taking the time off. Again, the job, and we've been delivering this for almost many years now. It was stressful as it is. Post-COVID and everything else that's happening around us, it's stressful nevertheless. So even more important for you as a legal practitioner to find ways to find that balance and ensuring that you have all the energy to come back to the grind and doing this day in and day out, right? So these are the top 7 obligations that we think that you should be aware of, and find the right tools, technologies, services, processes, however you want to use them, to always be on top of these obligations so that you're always aware and, as I mentioned before, have the acumen for how best you can succeed and deliver on these obligations. Okay? And as I mentioned before, please do use the chat window. If you can kindly mute your phone lines, though I have done it, I sometimes find that through the computer there may be some disturbances, so kindly mute your phone lines and do use the chat window to ask any questions that you may have. So let's get started first with the professional obligation that I want to talk about, which is the client intake, service, and communication. If I were to summarize this slide share that you're looking at, right? The Law Society talks about the importance of you as a legal practitioner, both individually or as a company or as a group of individuals working together, having certain processes in place to capture information, starting with the detailed recording of any call or consultation that you have with potential clients, repeat clients, right, client in general. So the first step really is reviewing how are you capturing that information. There are some law firms that we work with which have those who have a specific PDF or Word template that they send out to their clients via email, have them fill it out, send it back. It's almost like a precursor to the client intake process. So it's almost like reviewing some basic information, right? So that's one way of doing things. The other one is, of course, having a web page on your website that allows you to capture some basic information almost as a contact us, but wants to further saying client intake form and having prospective clients fill out information, send it to you for your review, and maybe you follow up after that, understanding a little bit more about that client. You have practice management systems that can facilitate these as well, such as uLaw. So you have many different ways. The first thing is understanding how do you do it today. You could also be paper-based. Maybe you have a printed document that you require people to fill out and fax it back to you. So ensuring that you have a process today to capture this information. One caveat, if you're doing this online, is you have now the flexibility of capturing mandatory fields. So if there are certain pieces of information that is very critical for you to review your potential candidate as a client prior to even serving them. So maybe there's a certain area of practice that you focus on and you want to ensure that you're not getting clients with interest in other areas of practice that you don't focus on. Those are great ways for you to reduce time spent. Again, going back to those efficiencies by asking those clients for those quick questions. Okay. Once you have that information, the next obligation, and we talk about this quite often in our webinars, is you have the obligation of doing what's called as a conflict check. I'm sure you're pretty aware of this. The conflict check for confidential information, of course, is a process. And depending on how many years you've been in business, the time and the breadth of that search can be vast. If you've just gotten started, you probably remember the Peter Smiths that you worked with or John Smiths. If you have been in business for several years, then you may have come across several John Smiths. Now, it's important that you have a system in place. And this is where we talk about the importance of technology, not a specific product or tool, but technology in general that can facilitate and make it easier on your life and also ensure compliance with regards to getting that information back to you in a timely manner. So doing a conflict search as soon as you've done a client intake, very important. Ensuring, of course, that you are fully aware of any conflict that exists in representing that potential client. Now, as an obligation, what you're required to do after that step is make a yes or no decision. I've done the conflict, and I'm comfortable moving forward with the next step, which is really creating the matter and file and proceeding further with representing this client for whatever reason that may be. Or if it's a no, then documenting why that is the case and providing a non-engagement letter as a logical closure to that initial conversation is very critical, and it is a part of your obligation to do so. So there's almost like a workflow or a flow chart after that conflict check to say yes or no and take two different decision trees based on your decision. Okay? Now, if you have determined, of course, that it's okay to move forward, then the next logical step is to have, again, a defined way in which you want to ask for collateral or fees for your services. Again, this is all part of that planning. This is a great time, once again, to plan, really understand where you've done very well in 2021, given all the issues that we've all had. Understanding the positives and negatives of the services that you offer, understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding your business in terms of expenses that you incurred, and coming up with a series of areas of practices that you believe is going to be a successful path for your profitability and something that comes natural to you, of course, as a service offering, and coming up with templates that clearly indicate how you want to proceed further, whether it's a retainer letter or an engagement letter, not waiting for the last minute to create a new document every time. It helps to create templates, at least as a starting guide for these areas of practices, so that you can now get back to your customer faster than before. For example, if it's a small claims matter, maybe it's your strategy to come up with a flat fee structure, and maybe the retainer document pretty much outlines all the English language, the nomenclature, or any language that you're delivering this document in, which are all the cookie cutter information already in it, like your signature, terms of conditions, non-engagement clause, right? Just like any other contract that you would expect it to be. Another aspect that it's important for you to provide as clarity is if there's a retainer expectation from the client. Are you expecting a retainer as part of that service? Because that's money in advance, and there's certain professional obligations that you have and how best you manage this trust money, right? So part of determining collateral for fees is also ensuring that you're clear in your communication to the customer and setting expectations that this is the money that you've been asking as a retainer, and this is how it's potentially going to be used, and this is the order in which that money is going to be transferred over to your general account, or this is how you're going to move money and make your money at every stage. So it could be after a certain logical closures. For example, immigration have certain buckets of, I would say, time or certain stages, for lack of a better term, and there are fees associated with it. There could be other areas of practice where it's a contingency, so it's a different engagement letter. So really coming down to the area of practice, having a structured manner for that area of practice helps as a starting point. And as I mentioned before, letters of non-engagement, very critical if that's the path that you've taken and move forward with. Okay. And before I move into the file management, which is really the next obligation that I want to talk about, around the first obligation around client intake, service, and communication, two important aspects that we highlight is the retainer letter or engagement letter be very well drafted. You have templates that are available across practice management systems. Individuals in the business that are senior to you or your friends or colleagues may provide you with templates as means of getting started. Over a period of time, you may draft your own templates that makes most sense for your business. But this document is very critical because it pretty much builds the foundation of that business relationship that you have. whether it's docketing style, invoicing style, ensuring that payments are being made at the right time, everything comes back to this document. Okay? Even if you were to charge your customer with interest because they haven't paid on time, it's going to come back to this signed agreement that you have. And hopefully you have stated clearly and made it easy to understand for your customer that these are their own responsibilities to keep in mind, that they have to pay you within 30 days, 15 days, whatever that may be. Okay? Talking about the importance of any electronic communication and the frequency and method of various communications that you may have, because sometimes you may need answers fast, and if you've agreed upon that text and WhatsApp are agreed upon channels of communication, and if the client is comfortable in accepting that in certain forms of communication, then maybe there's an expectation of how soon that they get back to you. Right? We've heard of cases where clients sometimes may take time to get back with critical information. That may delay the process, costing you money as a legal firm. So ensuring that you've done well to cover yourself for any of those such losses, this is the place to do it. So please to find ways, as I mentioned, talking to colleagues or friends, or understanding from others in the industry, or looking at current templates that practice management tools can provide you. Find ways to draft and deliver a well thought out of retainer agreement. Okay? Which pretty much covers all these critical areas, right from nature and scope of matter to risks associated with certain methods of communication. So you've done the client intake. You acknowledge that there is maybe no risk through that conflict search, and you've done well to sign a retainer agreement, and the customer, let's assume, has paid you a retainer, or maybe there's no retainer and it's just a leap of faith general, whatever it may be. You've signed an engagement letter. Now time comes for you to understand the obligations around how you manage those files or matters. Okay? And based on, of course, the Law Society's guidelines around important components of file management that they would look for, starts with having separate files for each and respective matter. That's one of the critical components they talk about, especially if you're currently managing this in a very manual way, and that's totally fine. And if you are doing so, then it's your responsibility to ensure that the file numbering, that the information, that it's dated, it's easy for you to do your conflict searches, which is obviously going to benefit you and your firm. All of that starts with having some uniqueness to these files, right? Even if it's for the same client, the Law Society talks about having different file numbers for different matters, even if it's the same client. So if you have a naming convention which has the customer's name in it, then please make sure that there's a certain uniqueness attached to the initial file name that can differentiate between a small claims matter and another family matter that you may be delivering for the same John Smith. Because the parties involved in these matters may differ, and hence they're unique in their own right. And the next time that you do a conflict search, it's very critical that you use this uniqueness as the center point for you to search for that information across matters, across parties involved, etc. The second aspect, which is more so for internal maintenance, is that the Law Society talks about, is of course having certain best practices around securing the data of these files and ensuring that it's well organized so that it's easy for you to search for information when it's relevant. We'll first start with the security aspect. If you're using a manual system, if you're storing all of the information in your own personal computer, laptop, then certainly ensure that you have a good virus protection for your computers, because we're all in the web. We're accessing a lot of different websites, and There could be a possibility of a malware attacking your laptop, and if you haven't had the time to back up this information yourself, then you pretty much stand the chance of losing that data, and this is important for you to consider. Now, if you were using for printing out files and things of that nature, ensure that the manila folders are secure, in a locker or some kind of a file cabinet that you may have. If you're using PC-based systems, again, ensuring that that particular laptop computer that you're using is well protected against, as I mentioned before, any malware attack or virus attack, making the sanity of that PC available, or maybe you're backing up the data yourself, or have IT staff that can help you do that. If you're using cloud-based systems, then the data backup pretty much happens automatically, but it's still important that you read the fine print in terms of, or ask the provider about their policies for backup, and talk about the security aspect of it. Okay? So in the cloud, today's day and age, really, we talk about certain very standard protocols that have become table stakes, such as 256-bit encryption, something you may have heard of, having strong passwords, encryption. These are very critical. APIs could be another big term that people use, which are program interfaces that they have with third-party systems. So understanding the risks and rewards and ensuring that you have, no matter what system you use, the process still defines the need for a secure and chronologically organized file management system. Okay. The third component, which is critical, is ensuring that under that file, given its uniqueness, you have the right ways in which you can start to record, whether there's dockets, all the specific pieces of tasks that you would do within that file. Right? So creating a matter, of course, is the first step, but then once you've created that matter, once you have that uniqueness to the file, once you're able to search that file easily, now comes the specific tasks that you would do day in and day out. Right? Because there's almost a rinse and repeat for every other client that you bring into the system. And hence it's important that you're comfortable recording client interactions, docketing the time and effort that you've put in. Sometimes there may be disbursements involved in that particular file. There could be reminders such as court dates needed to be part of that file. There could be different individuals working on a file, and hence you may have a need to correspond. There could be non-billable tasks, pro bono hours. So a file management system from a legal standpoint needs to cater to all of these very unique needs that you have as a operator of this business and this product or system that you use. So be critical to understand the process in itself, the expected documents and reports from the Law Society, and find the right combination of services, process, and tools that can help deliver that for you. Okay. So we move on to the next obligation, which is the financial management. And we still talk about financial management as it pertains to the matter. Of course, there's an overarching summary of all the financials that go behind each and every matter, leading to a business-wide ledger and journal. But let's say you've done the client intake, conflict check, created a file, docketed. Of course, around that file management, one of the important components would be the docketing, dispersing on time, as we mentioned before. But the next natural step is to send an invoice. So finding the right system, product, tool, services, what combination you use to help you generate these invoices, because they are really your starting point to recognize your revenue. Whether you use trust money or not, you still have to generate this as a means of indicating the work that has gone behind. Whether you're doing the eligible trust transfer or waiting for a payment, it's still critical to generate that invoice. Once you've done that, then the financial management, of course, kicks in. And this, once again, as I mentioned before, relates back to the retainer or engagement letter and what's already been agreed upon. So the schedule of invoicing, the fees and the right way of docketing, the rate at which you're docketing, the disbursement charges that are going to be incurred, all of that goes back to what was signed in that retainer agreement. And if you've done so and if you've done well to stick to the plan, then of course it's very critical that you find the right reminding system internally, whether it's a staff that you have on roll or if it's a practice management system that can remind you, is ensuring that you're delivering on the promise and the commitments made in that agreement. Okay, so ensuring that you're not delaying the invoices, both for your own business hygiene as well as from a perspective of prudence to your client. It's very critical that you have the right systems or reminders in place so that you're executing on your plan. A good example is a delayed invoice can affect not only, as I mentioned, the cadence of your relationship, but it can also sometimes affect the HST or provincial taxes that you owe the government, right? Or it may at least delay the calculation of it sometimes. So it's very important that you follow the plan. And this is where time management is critical, because each matter has its own plan. And it's important for you to understand right away, all right, for this matter, the invoice needs to go out at this particular time. For another invoice, maybe, or another matter, you could probably wait for it, right? And the reason I talk about all of this is the financial management is nothing but an accumulative result of all the tasks that you do prior to it getting there, right? As long as you've done those tasks as per plan, and you find a way to record each and every transaction that financially affects that system, then I think you should be in good shape. The real problem comes is when you either delay the data entry of it, in which case sometimes you may forget that, and now you need help to remind you of it and backtrack it. That's where a lot of people lose time. Rather, find the discipline and the process to input that information, capturing them, and reflecting on them right away. Another important component of financial management, which we often find, is, again, going back to that retainer letter, but you're going to probably be bored that I'm repeating this, but also from your own standpoint of managing financial hygiene, is staying on top of outstanding payments. We have a lot of legal firms that sometimes shy away from asking the question of, payments being made on time as a part of course, service excellence and ensuring that the customer doesn't feel bad. But it's very critical to stay professional in this regard and stick to the plan of the retainer letter and ensure that you have, again, a reminder system that tells you that within the next 5 days, you should expect payments from all these clients because you've not received them yet. So if it's in at 30, having a reminder during the 25th day makes it easy for you to now send a very small, subtle reminder to your client. If you have yourself forgotten about it, if you're reaching out to them after 45 days, then, of course, that just shows a bit of slack. Okay? And that's missed revenue opportunity for that time range. So be very critical, as I mentioned before, in ensuring that your payments are being made on time and as per agreed terms. Now, part of your retainer agreement, as I mentioned before, is a combination of, dockets and disbursements. Both are revenue-generating components, but one is a recoverable expense, which is the disbursement. So one of the recommendations that we make in many of our webinars, we're going to be talking about it next week too, is if you can, because you have the luxury to get a retainer in advance and have a trust account in place as a business owner, is find ways in which you can maximize the use of the trust account with regards to disbursements. There could be certain disbursements that are very key and easier in nature of business to be transacted from trust. So if you're basically paying an actual disbursement, if the court fee is $200 and you're paying $200, then yeah, great. Use the trust account. The fastest way, you don't even have to wait to recover it. The money comes right out of the retainer agreement, the amount in the retainer. Right? There are certain other types of disbursements that we talk about that may have a profit or a loss margin, which are not great candidates for trust, in which case you need to be very vigilant to track them, record them, make them part of the invoice, and recover them. Because if you don't recover them in time, that's part of the financial management, then it sometimes may be harder to recover at a later time. Okay? In addition to all of this, of course, some documents that are very critical for you to keep in mind are your bank statements. I'm sure you receive either electronic or paper-based bank statements for your trust and general accounts. Ensure, please, that you have the right process to, file them, I guess. So you have cloud-based systems where you can file them. You can use practice management systems that connect with cloud-based systems to store these files in one place. Or you could use them again, print them out, store them in folders, ensure you have a good file management system in your office, and be very specific about how you are managing those paper-based documents. Okay? Some additional documents could be canceled checks, especially deposit slips. So if you're at the bank, please make it a point to request for a receipt of that deposit slip or a duplicate deposit slip so that you have a record of that. Okay, so goes to any cash transactions, whether that's a cash retainer or payment, becomes very critical to have those deposit slips so that now you can backtrack saying that $800 was a payment made by this particular client for this particular matter. Because if you don't do that as and when it happens, it's very unnatural for it to be misplaced, misrepresented, forgotten, etc. Right? And last but not the least, when it comes to reports and documents that the Law Society ought ask you for, we're going to come down to that. Okay. Now these are some of the standard documents that auditors ask for, right? So you've got the ledger, and we discussed this in further detail in one of my other webinars. Again, it's definitely not a plug-in, but just don't have the time to specifically focus on it today because of a broader subject. But if you look at the ledger in itself, you have, based on your setup right now, you may have a trust ledger as well as the general ledger, right? You may have journals, so you could have receipt journal, disbursement journal for both trust and general account. And then you have jurisdictional documents such as Form 9A for the province of Ontario. You have the expense book. You have your monthly reconciliation statement, which is a big item. So you at least have 5 or 6 documents that you need to generate at least monthly basis. So you don't have to record them and report them to some audit space during that time period, but it's critical for you to record and report and keep that record of it so that when you're being asked for that February reconciliation, you have it already available. Or at least have the process so that when you're being asked for, you can generate it on demand. Okay? So you've got ledgers, journals, some provincial specific documents, and most importantly, the reconciliation statement. Now, all these documents translate or communicate a specific message or information to the auditor to tell them in reviewing your documents that you've done a good job of managing your finances the right way. When they find doubt in terms of misappropriation, it really comes down to the numbers not matching up within these ledgers and journals, because that's their passage or pathway to understanding how you've managed your finances. Especially if you have a trust account, it becomes very critical because they're very analytical about how you manage your trust money. Okay? So make it, again, part of the process for the new year or plan. If you're already doing it, great. Just continue the good job. Find ways to reduce the time that you're putting to produce them. But if you're already doing so, then great. If you're not, find ways that you can do a better job of it. So just a quick recap as we're halfway through and I have another 20 minutes. The title for today's webinar is Everything Practice Management. It's 1 hour of professionalism CPD credit in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. The title to use is Everything Practice Management. We're pretty much covering 7 major professional obligations that you have as a legal practitioner to be aware of, and find the right process, methods, tools to help you deliver an outstanding experience for yourself and your clients across these obligations. Makes you proud. We just looked at client intake, file management, and financial management as the top 3. Client intake, make sure that you're doing the right job of pretty much recording every consultation call that you get from clients. Ensure that you're doing your conflict checks. Find ways that you can templatize your retainer or agreements. Determine collateral for fees. If it's a no across your conflict check, have non-engagement letters sent out right away, so you're off the hook. Manage files better, make them secure wherever you're storing that information. Chronological, easy to search, index, and most critical, keeping them unique, even if it's for the same client. Find the right tools, process, service, providers to deliver right from that invoice as per the retainer agreement to the end where you're delivering ledgers and journals as part of the financial obligations that you have. And then we come into the business management obligation. And once again, there are 2 important components that trickle away from the financial management. One, as part of that business ownership as an entity in the provinces that you work or have your business within, you may have specific financial obligations such as your HST, GST, PST that you have to pay. You have the income tax to pay for your corporation, right, based on the P&L. So from a business management standpoint, there is a financial management component to it as well. But I'll get to that maybe a little later. But some of the important components that we cover here that the Law Society talks about, especially if you're someone who's a newbie who's just graduated from college and you're looking for advice on how best to set this up, some recommended steps, and the Law Societies do have some wonderful literature in their websites, very pragmatic. They talk about a combination of or series of steps that they request you to take. One is visit your financial institution, whether it's a bank, credit union. Find the right partner who can help you through this. A financial institution that understands your business. For example, if you have to repeat yourself every time that the particular bank or financial institution has to take their interest or their particular service fee from the general account, and if they're constantly taking from your trust account, it just means that they don't get it. There are other banks, financial institutions that probably do a better job of managing the sanity of your trust account. So that's one first step that you probably want to take, because those are some of those little things that can disrupt your reconciliation process. Okay, bank errors for no reason of yours, right? Find the right tools, and this is something we talk about as well. As much as it's not mandatory for you to use software, it's almost become a need of the hour, whether it's for time efficiencies or whether that's for a differentiating factor. Technology, especially in the legal space, is only looking to elevate the experience for your customer and improve efficiency and provide that X factor in your business delivery through this technology, right? Whether that's online payments made easy, right? There was a time when you had to go to the legal office to make a payment through a certified check. But today you're able to accept credit card payments into your trust account. You're able to send out invoices with links so that customers can pay them almost like a shopping experience on Amazon or otherwise, right? So technology and software is critical now to give that X factor to your customer. So again, it's that wonderful time of the year where you can start to review the current software that you have, if you have one, and be in the market to learn more because you have more options today. Do the due diligence, learn about these software packages, find the ones that can best offer you what you need. They offer trial periods, demonstrations, follow-ups, etc. Depending on the path you take, understanding that the data that you're reciting in your office is not just your own information, it's your client's information, and hence it's your obligation to ensure the security of that data, that it's not lost. So finding the right partner in storing that information in a very secured manner, very critical. Or if you're doing this yourself, then ensuring that you have the right steps to take, backing up the data on a regular basis, ensuring that you're changing passwords on a regular basis, having the right virus protection across all the devices that you use. Some of the key takeaways that I'll talk about. I'm sure you've started to hear for many years now, and it's only becoming a reality closer to us. It's the fact that we're all on our mobile devices more than laptops. We're on our, iPads and phones, and that's where the customers are too. So whether it's your website that delivers information, making it responsive enough to be delivered on a mobile phone, whether it's a practice management system that gives you the capability to access information on a mobile phone, from the client to yourself, understand if the providers that you have are making it mobile friendly, and if you as a service provider are making it mobile friendly moving forward, right? As the processors and as technology improves on the mobile devices, you can start to realize that a mobile device sometimes may have more power than a low to mid-end laptop. So the amount of time that it takes to process a web transaction on a laptop may be slower on the laptop than on the phone. So that's only to your advantage. So the next time you're able to send an invoice with the link that can be opened on a mobile phone, then your chances of getting paid faster because it's just easy and convenient and fast. Just think about that. So yes, it's an obligation for you to ensure that you're starting to provide these services needed. Another critical component of the obligation is that you have information available at your fingertips so that you can react and respond to your client's need right away. So a good example that I often talk about is the phone system, right? When you're in the office and you have a voice message system, and if someone's leaving a message, I guess gone are the days where you have to come back to that physical device to look at the message. You have voice over IP systems that pretty much generate that voice message and send it to your email. Some of them can even transpond the actual information in text and text you that, right? So these little things can help in a long way in terms of your customer experience and give that X factor as we often talk about. So keep in mind, and added to all of this, so these are all investments that you have to make, so making this now an important component of your next year's budget. So if you're looking for a new phone, that's part of your budget. If you're looking for a new phone system, a new practice management system, maybe an upgraded security for your own internal data storage, all of this comes at a cost. Incremental cost, of course, just like your Law Society fees. You have to plan to pay the Law Society fees, your O&E fees, etc. This also, if made as part of your plan, would be easier for you to understand and appreciate the importance of it. And the last thing I mentioned, I'll talk later, is the financial management as part of the business management. So having your HST account, if that makes sense to your business, if you're earning at that rate and you have to pay HST, then find the right process to capture HST, both paid and received. So of course, once you've received it, it's through the invoice. If you've paid it, it's in the invoice that you've got from your vendor. But finding a system that can record it, such as a business management system, becomes very critical. And finding the right system that can pretty much provide you with the P&L, revenue generation statement, expense statement, etc. becomes critical. And at the end of the day, whether you're using a service, maybe an accountant, bookkeeper to facilitate doing this for you, that comes at a cost, that comes at a price. So planning that as part of your budget for 2022 becomes critical. Or if you're going to be dependent on a combination of your own involvement in learning a software that can do that for you, with maybe a bit of bookkeeping services to help capture data under regular time, the combination of how you deliver it comes finally back to you and your comfort. But planning for it is very critical, and that's constant across all legal practitioners. So we discussed business management, so right from marketing to all the systems that you need in place, to the finances that you need to have in hand. And the last component that I'll talk about that goes back to practice management around business is understanding where you're making your revenue. If you're just getting started, that's a different thing. But if you've been in business and if you're not tracking your success factors, so if you're making good revenue out of your family matters, the next step is to really understand, where are you getting your clients from? Is it a referral source? Is it a specific geographical region because you have a banner there? Maybe it's behind a bus and it's a specific location. So really understanding which area of practice is your star revenue provider is very critical, because for your 2022 planning, it becomes part of your marketing budget. Maybe you want to keep that banner going. Maybe you want to introduce a new Instagram advertisement or Facebook ad or LinkedIn ad, whatever is meaningful to where your clients are. That's very critical. Understanding the age group, or if you're representing corporations and if your clients are pretty much businesses and not individuals, then there's a certain marketing plan for that, right? So really understanding where you are today, your success, failure factors, recording them, reviewing them, makes it easier for you to know, react, and plan for the years ahead. Okay. Then we talk about the fifth one, which is the professional obligation around professional management. So one such is what you're doing today, which is completion of the required CPD hours. Okay. Again, this is nothing as mandatory. The CPD hours, I believe, is mandatory, but reviewing new legislation and case laws, that's very critical, I think, to how you operate as a legal practitioner, ensuring that you're always on top of these case laws. And there are certain tools that can help you with that as well. So finding the right tools that give you that information, very critical. Membership of professional associations, again, this is not so much mandated, it's more of a recommendation to find common-minded people. I think the idea behind this particular item is so that you can find a common voice Find colleagues to whom you can share your own problems, maybe understand how they're doing certain things, implement best practices that have been previously delivered by other friends or colleagues. Sometimes associations offer you membership benefits that you can take advantage of. So those could be some reasons, but mostly it's for a common voice to participate in. And last but not least, of course, very important, a few years back this did become a subject topic, is reviewing the professional conduct guidelines. So if you have a lot of employees, ensuring you have the right surveys on a regular basis, getting information or feedback back from your employees around conduct and having a certain structure around how best you implement the professional conduct within your business is very critical. And the last two, again, as I mentioned before, there are enough books for us to read upon time management, but three important components that I'll highlight as a legal practitioner when it comes to time management. One is, of course, because there are so many different things that you have to do at the same time, maintaining a to-do list becomes critical, whether it's a manual to-do list that you create for yourself or an automated to-do list that a system can create for you based on the tasks that you're in. For example, if you've got a court visit next week, and if you put that as a docket or an item or an event within a matter, then that automatically becoming part of a to-do list or task or a reminder system on your phone is pretty much what we're talking about, right? So that's a combination of manual and automated that's always kept you prepared for the next steps. A second component that we often talk about in our demonstrations is having your focus on active files. So when you're especially searching for information, find a logical closure to a matter and close that matter so that your eyes are focused only on the active files. And as simple as this may seem, I think it's very critical to have a logical closure to a file, because then you can take your eyes off of that and use that information more for conflict searches or maybe as examples, as best cases that you've done well to repeat upon. So you can pretty much copy that matter as a template over to a new matter. So if you've done a successful small claims matter and it's a slip and fall, and if you find that the next slip and fall that comes in is very similar in nature, you can repurpose all of that steps that you've taken to successfully close out a file in the previous SEC matter, as an example. Right? So even from that perspective, closing matters is very critical. And the third thing that we find sometimes is left out is the amount of non-billable time, both client and non-client related, that goes unnoticed. So whether you have a timesheet system or time management, time card system, whatever it may be within your business, ensure that you're capturing the pro bono hours that you're offering your clients, as well as capturing the non-billable tasks that you're doing. Sometimes they may be warranted. So you spending this 1 hour essentially is a non-billable task, but it's giving you your CPD credits that you need, and hence those are the types of examples we're talking about. Maybe you're in the library reading case laws, maybe you're reviewing certain documents, all of that making it to prepare for your best service offering, but they're non-billable. So from a time management perspective, kindly do have a look for 2022 and forward. Find a system and a process for you to capture non-billable tasks, both client and non-client related. Because that would give you a better understanding of where your time goes, because time is essence, time is money. With another minute or 2 minutes left, the last one that I want to talk about is personal management. As tasking as this business is, you're all legal practitioners for a reason, because you like what you do, you're well educated in this profession to deliver the service, but it does come at a certain cause of you losing sleep sometimes, or time management issues, could be overload of work, could be multiple matters having to be dealt with at the same time, the pressure of performance, which we all have. But finding, as I mentioned, the right help, combination of services that you pay for, tools that can help reduce the amount of mundane work that you otherwise have to do, and having a plan can certainly set yourself up for a more prepared. It's almost like knowing what you're getting into, sometimes rather than just getting caught in between the tsunami, not knowing why you're there. So, believe it or not, this Law Society does talk about the need for you to take time off. The right breaks, doesn't have to be vacations, but the right breaks that gets to talk about. Recording and understanding and defining your success criteria, whether that's growth of revenue, growth of customer base, maybe a new area of practice. Defining it for the next year ahead is important so that you can now track and measure against that milestone. Okay? And of course, watching a lot of movies and relaxing in front of Netflix. Awesome. So those would come the top 7 professional obligations that you as a practitioner have at a very high level. A lot of other aspects are encompassed within these 7. So as long as you stay on top of those, find the right help to get on top of these obligations, I think 2022, I hope and pray, is going to be very beneficial, successful, and happy for everyone who's joined us today and for everyone who's doing this wonderful work of being a legal practitioner. Okay? Don't want to definitely talk about this. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for your consumption. As I mentioned before, we are uLaw. Do visit uLaw.io if you need more information about who we are. We're a legal accounting, business management, and practice management system that's been delivering our services and products to legal practitioners across Canada just over 14 years. I'm going to pause here and thank everyone for joining today's webinar and see if there's any questions that you have for me and my team. Thank you very much.